Okay, so again, you're taking this subject, understanding the self, and ano nga ba yung laman ng subject na to, no? So yun yung pag-usapan natin ngayon. What is understanding the self, and how will we tackle, no, the topic of the self, because the self is one of the most simplest but at the same time the most complex thing that we will have to explore for the rest of our lives. Hindi natatapos ang understanding the self sa subject na understanding the self. But more on that later. So understanding the self, this course includes 3 parts. So the first part will be the self from various perspectives. No, we will talk about the self in different areas of knowledge, of areas of expertise, because the self can be contextualized in a lot of context. No, kasi hindi siya the self is flexible. No, we can view the self in terms of psychological, philosophical, and so on. And then after that, we will unpack the self, no? Ano ba talaga yung kasi yung self na yan hindi lang isa yan, no? Ang self ay maraming mga dimensions. Maraming dimension yung self natin. May physical part, no? May social part, may psychological part, 'di ba? Yung self natin hindi lang siya isa. Isa siyang grupo ng mga self. Okay? Isa lang siya pero hindi rin siya isa. Siguro magigets nyo din yun. No? And managing and caring for the self. So ano ba yung mga self from various perspective? We can talk about the self in terms of the philosophical context, no? The philosophical perspective of the self. Excuse me. The sociological perspective, the anthropological, psychological, and then the cultural, which is yung Eastern and Western perspective. Because in terms of philosophical, there are a lot of philosophical topics or philosophical texts that will describe the self. No? Minsan nagko-contradict sila sa isa't isa. Minsan they're just saying the same thing in different language and so on. And then sociological naman, no? How do a person or the self interact with the society? Since we are social animals, no, we have this tendency to have a different way of expressing ourselves in terms of other people, no? Kung pag meron tayong ibang mga kasama, iba yung mga ano natin, iba yung personalidad natin or so on. And anthropological, how culture could affect our sense of self. And then psychological, so ano yung mga different psychological theories that will explain what the self is. And then of course, Eastern and Western perspective, because iba ang parang iba yung conceptualization ng mga tao sa East at West with regards sa kanilang pagkatao. Okay? Kasi sa mga Eastern, let's say for example sa East, di ba, pinahahalagaan natin yung pag-iisama sa ibang tao. Sa West, walang ganun. No? Hindi nila masyadong, although syempre, meron pa ring notion ng pagkikisama, but it is not the priority. No? Hindi sila takot na kalabanin yung ibang tao, especially kung alam nilang tama sila. Diba? Pero dito sa Pilipinas, 'di ba, pag lalabanan mo yung lalo na yung mga karamihan, no? Parang medyo mahirap sa atin. Kailangan natin magkisama. So, yun, yung mga ganung pag-usapan natin yung mga yan. And then of course, the unpacking of self, no? Ano ba yung self? Hindi lang kasi siya isang entity, no? I mean, isang entity lang tayo, but we have different sides of ourself. So, meron tayong the physical side of ourself, the sexual side, the material or economic side, the spiritual even, and then the political, and even yung digital self. No, yung digital self bago to. Kasi dati wala namang computer, wala namang internet, wala namang Facebook, wala namang TikTok. Ngayon, meron tayong mga ganun. 'Di ba? Napansin niyo ba na iba yung self na nilalagay natin online kumpara sa self na kung sino ba talaga tayo. So pag-uusapan din natin yung mga yan. And then of course, once na kilala na natin yung sarili natin, hopefully, alam na natin kung paano natin pag-aralan yung sarili natin, we can have an idea on how to take care of ourselves, no? Learning to be a better student, taking charge of one's health, and then bonus lesson, if ever makakaabot tayo, how to plan your finances, because this is also part of taking care of oneself, di ba? Kung hindi mo kayang anuhin yung finances mo, no? Kung every other day meron kang delivery ng Shopee at tinatago mo sa nanay mo yung COD kung magkano, tapos i-request mo sa seller na nanalo ka sa raffle, di ba? Medyo may problem na yata tayo pag gano'n. So, kailangan natin i-manage yung ating finances so that we will have more opportunities in knowing, expressing, and loving ourselves. Okay? So, that's the content of our, that's the content of our subject. Essentially, the mantra of this subject is know thyself. No? The self is your main companion in living in this world. So, sino bang kasama mo sa buong buhay mo, 'di ba? Yung mga ibang kasama natin like mga kapatid, kaibigan, jowa, asawa, anak, ang mga yan, di naman natin forever kasama yung mga yan. Pero for sure, ang forever natin kasama is mga sarili natin. So kung hindi natin kikilalanin yung sarili natin, how lonely would that be? Diba? Hindi natin kilala yung kasama natin for the rest of our lifetime. Diba? Yes, it's well and good to have a companion, to have your one, no? You have your significant other. But of course, how would you able to love another person if you don't even know, or even in essence, you do not love yourself? So, mas maganda kung kilala din natin sarili natin and mamahalin natin yung sarili natin kung sino ba talaga siya at hindi yung pagpapanggap lang. So, who you are, who you want to be, who society wants you to be, and who you can be are some of the ideas we will explore. So, the self is freaking complex. It's not a simple thing. No? It's simple at the same time it's not. No? Alam natin kung sino tayo, but at the same time, alam nga ba natin kung sino tayo? Kasi may mga bagay sa sarili natin na minsan hindi natin alam, and then mabibigla na lang tayo, no? Ganun pala tayo. So it's very important na kailangan kilala natin sarili natin, alam natin ginagawa natin sa buhay natin, and of course, mamahalin din natin yung sarili natin. Because if we do not love ourselves, who would love us? Okay? So that's basically the goal of this subject is for you to not necessarily know yourself agad, kasi knowing yourself, again, it's a lifelong process. Even myself, I discover some things about myself that I did not know back then, no? And once you stop learning more about yourself, it's medyo nagiging boring na yung buhay, no? And hindi natatapos yung pagkilala mo sa sarili mo, pagkilala natin sa sarili natin subject na to. And hopefully, my goal in this subject is for you to have this curiosity, this drive to know more about yourself. No? I'm not aiming na makikilala niyo yung mga sarili niyo after this subject, because I assure you, you will not. But sana man lang, no? Sana man lang ma-instill ko sa inyo yung curiosity and yung means, no, kung paano nyo kikilalanin yung sarili ninyo. Okay? So, do you have any questions or clarifications with regards sa ating introduction ng topic natin? Meron ba?
Wala naman po.
Okay, sige. So, let's go on to the first perspective on knowing oneself, which is the philosophical perspective. Okay, so philosophical perspective of the self, from Socrates to Freud and other modern philosophers. Okay, so philosophy. Nag-take na kayo ng philosophy of man, if I'm not mistaken, nung senior high school kayo. So hopefully, medyo may naalala pa kayo regarding sa philosophy. And for sure, no, kilala nyo naman siguro si Socrates. So at the end of the topic, you're expected to explain the role of philosophy in understanding the self, discuss the different concepts of the self from philosophical perspective, differentiate the various concepts of the self, and identify their similarities or even differences. Develop your own philosophy of the self, hopefully. Okay? So, philosophy. Before we talk about the philosophical perspective, of course, we have to talk about what is philosophy in the first place. So, philosophy, from the etymology or the word itself, no, philia or philo or philein, no, means love, and then Sophia means wisdom. So, philosophy literally means the love of wisdom. Okay, so philosophy employs the inquisitive mind to discover the ultimate causes, reasons, and principles of everything, as in everything, from yourself to the universe. Okay, before science was a thing, philosophy was there, and every sciences that we know of started in philosophy. No? meron tayong isang side ng philosophy na tinatawag nating metaphysics, no? Doon na pupunta yung self. So metaphysics beyond the physical world, no? So more on the psychological, sociological, even political side ng things, yun yung metaphysics. So again, I'm not a philosophy major, so if I'm saying something wrong, you can correct me, no? But as far as I know, as far as my reading gets me, no? Yun, metaphysics is beyond the physics. More on the soft side, no? Kasi may hard sciences and then may soft sciences. So yung metaphysics yun as soft sciences. And psychology is one of the soft sciences. So the nature of the self is a topic of interest among philosophers. And the philosophical framework for understanding the self was heavily explored by ancient Greek philosophers such as Socrates and Plato. So philosophy, it's a way, or it's a branch of knowledge that wants to know some things. Okay? So pag sinabi lang isa kang pilosopo, isa kang taong very curious, no? Very curious kung bakit ba ganyan. Mas mahal mo pa ang dot. Hindi, joke lang. Bakit ba ganyan nangyayari yung mga bagay-bagay? Ano bang cause? Saan nanggaling? Ano yung reason? No? That includes sa mga physical objects. No? Saan ba nanggaling yung nature? Saan ba nanggaling yung earth? Saan ba nanggaling lahat? Saan ba nanggaling yung mga stars? Saan ba nanggaling ano? Ano yung shape ng earth? Ano yung shape ng ngayon? So lahat, everything. And included dyan yung self. So there are a lot of philosophers, especially yung triumvirate ni Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, investigating or exploring, no, the depths of the self and the human mind, especially si Aristotle. No? Si Aristotle siya yung pinaka-scientific sa kanilang tatlo. But of course, malaki din naman yung ambag ni Socrates at ni Plato. So speaking of ambag ni Socrates, so si Socrates, ang suggestion niya, no, according kay Plato, by the way, if you're not aware, no, si Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, mga ano yung mga yan? Mga mentor-mentee yung mga yan. Ang mentor ni Plato is si Socrates. Ang mentor ni Aristotle is si Plato. Pero, si Socrates, hindi siya nagsulat ng anything. No? Just a bit of context. Wala siyang sinulat. Ang lahat ng alam natin about kay Socrates, ang nagsulat niyan, si Plato. Kaya kung papansinin niyo mamaya, parehas sila ng mga parehas talaga sila ng kanilang mga thoughts or kanilang mga ideas kasi basically Socrates is a product, or our idea about Socrates is a product of Plato's writing. So lahat yung nakikita natin sa Socrates sa perspective ni Plato. Aristotle on the other hand, siya yung maraming nasulat and maraming nag-survive sa mga nasulat niya. Okay? And then may mga writings din about kay Aristotle, yung mga ibang writings pala yung ibang writings ni Aristotle is inedit ng anak niya, si Nicomachus or Nicomachus. So yung Nicomachean Ethics, siya yung parang nag-edit doon, no, sa ethics ni Aristotle. But anyway, so just a bit of context para hindi tayo nalilito and alam natin yung history ng tatlong to. So Socrates suggests that we must know ourselves, know thyself. What is the self and the qualities that define it? Philosophers agree that self-knowledge is a prerequisite to a happy and meaningful life. So, basically, sinasabi kung di mo kilala sarili mo, never kang magiging masaya. Agree ba kayo doon? Kung di nyo kilala sarili mo. Okay. Paano pag di mo kilala sarili mo? GG. No? Anyway, so to know more about ourselves, let us explore these ideas prompted or promoted. Hindi naman promoted. Mga pinropose na ideas nila Socrates hanggang Aristotle. Okay? So ancient Greek philosophy muna tayo. Lagi naman dito nag-umpisa yung philosophy. So Socrates, sabi ni Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. So for the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, the self is synonymous with the soul. And sa kanilang tatlo, di ba? Ang ano nila, soul is the self. And the word they use is psyche. You know? Diyan nanggaling yung word na psychology on the soul. So basically, yung ano namin, yung field namin is the study of souls, di ba? Tapos may mga statistics. But anyway, so yun yung mantra or isa sa mga parang famous lines ni Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. Because for him, yun nga, yung self natin, dyan nang gagaling lahat ng anything na ginagawa natin. So kung hindi mo alam or di mo man lang in-examine yung buhay mo, parang hindi ka na rin nabuhay. Kasi sino ba nabubuhay? Ikaw. So kung di mo in-explore yung nabubuhay na ikaw, then basically useless yung buhay mo, sinasabi ni Socrates. Sabi ni Socrates, the soul or the self is immortal. Socrates believed that every human possessed an immortal soul. Human life does not end at one's death. Okay? So Socrates explained that death is the departure of the soul for the eternal world. So Socrates and even at some extent in Plato, meron silang idea of the immortal world where everything is nandun yung ideal mo. Kumbaga pag mamamatay ka daw, kung ano yung ideal na katawan mo, ideal na ugali mo, yun yung soul mo mapupunta sa soul world, no? Bleach lang. So immortal sa immortal world or meron akong binabasang novel, no, kung kilala niyo si Brandon Sanderson. Dito niya binase yung the spiritual realm. Yung parang nandun lahat ng perfect. Yun yung ideal world. Okay? So parang sinasabi nila na tayo daw mga tao possess a soul and this soul is our potential. This soul is the ideal thing. No? Ito yung, kumbaga, meron tayong mga tao immortal, meron tayong capacity to become the ideal version of ourselves. No? Basta, malalaman lang natin kung sino yung soul na yun. Kumbaga meron tayong potential. Yung soul natin is immortal. Yung soul natin is very ideal. It just so happen na hindi tayo perfect kasi nasa physical realm pa rin tayo. May physical body tayo. The physical realm is changeable, transient, and imperfect. The body belongs to the physical realm. The ideal realm is unchanging, eternal, and immortal. The soul belongs to the ideal realm. So parang Socrates was the first thinker to focus on the full power of reason on human self, who we are, who we should be, and who we become. And the soul, ito yung sinasabi ko, the soul strives for wisdom and perfection. And reason is the soul's tool to achieve the exalted state of life. Basically, sinasabi ni Socrates na, yun nga, meron tayong soul, meron tayong body. Yung soul natin, this is immortal, this is perfect, this is the most ideal part of ourselves. And then we have the body, which is imperfect. No? Hindi siya pure. Parang, masyado siyang marumi. No? You know, marumi, exactly. Parang hindi siya ideal. No? Kasi nag-change siya lagi. No? Meron siyang mga needs na kailangan nating i-satisfy and so on. So, yung soul natin minsan na-hamper ng body, no? Our preoccupation with bodily needs such as food, drink, and sex, pleasure, sex, material possessions, and wealth keep us from attaining that wisdom. Kumbaga, nasa way natin yung physical body natin. No? Kumbaga, in a perfect world, we are perfect human beings. It just so happened that we are also living in the physical realm, kaya parang nahihila tayo pababa. Okay? Kaya, ang way daw para maging human tayo, ang way daw para maging the ideal person tayo, kailangan nating mag-soul searching. Kailangan natin hanapin yung soul natin within because that soul from within strives for wisdom and perfection. And that soul will transcend or will exalt our state of life kasi nga, yun yung perfect version natin. Kaya sinasabi niya lagi, we have to strive for wisdom. We have to strive for to know more about ourselves because if we know ourselves, if we know our souls, then we can live the best version of ourselves. Okay? So a person can have a meaningful and happy life if he becomes virtuous and know the value of himself that can be achieved through constant soul searching. So for him, this is best achieved when one tries to separate the body from the soul as much as possible. And one method na parang legacy niya, no, in knowing oneself is yung tinatawag nating Socratic method. Also called introspection, no? But Socratic method is much brutal. It's a method of carefully examining our thoughts, emotions to gain self-knowledge. Are you familiar with Socratic method on how it works and what is the essence of it? Familiar kayo? Hindi kayo familiar? Sige. So, Socratic method kasi, it's a way, or this is the way how Socrates pissed off people. Okay? Kasi meron tayong mga beliefs, tama? Meron tayong mga beliefs about the world. Let's say, for example, ang belief natin that all men are mortal, or all men are like this, all men are, sabihin na, all men are trash, or meron tayong mga beliefs na ganyan. And those beliefs are not perfect. They have holes, they have logical holes, they have limitations. And sa Socratic method, ang gagawin niya is ipupush niya yung limit na yon. No? Tatanungin niya ng paulit-ulit kung ganun ba talaga yung paniniwala mo. Isang example na binigay ni Plato sa writings ni Plato is yung divine things. No? How can we say that a thing is divine? Is it because the gods love them? Or is it because it's divine, that's why gods loves them? In short, kumbaga, let's say for example, ang isang holy object, no? Ano ba yung magandang holy object ng Greeks? Basta, let's say for example, may isang holy object. Yung holy object ba na yun is holy siya kasi gusto siya ng mga gods? Or holy siya kasi holy siya kaya siya nagustuhan ng mga gods? Yun yung tanong kasi may mga parang yung scenario dun is parang holy yung bagay na yan, dapat wag nating questionin or something. Tapos si Socrates, being Socrates, tinanong niya yung tao, sigurado ka holy yan? Parang gano'n. Hindi ako banal yan. Banal ba yan dahil gusto ng mga gods, or banal yan dahil banal talaga siya kaya siya nagustuhan ng mga gods? Paano kung yung mga gods nagkaroon sila ng pagbabago ng isip na ayaw na nila yan, holy pa rin ba yan? Anong gagawin natin dyan kung hindi na holy? Ganun. So, ulit-ulit yon. Ganun yung Socratic method. In a more practical terms, actually ginagamit din ng Socratic method sa psychology, no? Cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's say for example, merong belief itong taong ito na wala siyang kwenta. Diba? May mga times na ganun, diba? May mga times na parang feeling natin wala tayong kwentang tao. Yung parang yung self-esteem natin sobrang wala akong kwenta, ayaw ng mga tao sa akin. Hindi ako magaling na tao. Sa Socratic method, ang gagawin ng therapist nun, so you believe that na wala kang kwenta. What made you say so? Bakit mo nasabing wala kang kwenta? No, sasabihin ng client nun. Kasi lahat ng ginagawa ko parang hindi tama, lahat ng ginagawa ko parang, lahat ng hinahawakan ko parang nagta-turn into dust, nagta-turn into negative things, no? Tapos ang gagawin ng pero ako, hinawakan mo yung buhay ko, naging kliyente kita. Palagay mo, naging bang masama yung buhay ko? No, sasabihin naman ng kliyente, naging masama yung buhay mo kasi meron kang pinoproblema ngayon. Sure ka na pinoproblema kita? Hindi naman kita pinoproblema. In fact, tinutulungan nga kita, and this is something of a blessing or something. Hanggang sa magkakaroon ng logical flaw yung belief ng tao na yan, na hindi naman pala siya walang kwenta, no? May mga bagay din naman pala sa buhay niya na hindi naman nag-put into shambles. Yung parang okay pa naman yung ibang part ng buhay niya. So in that way, no, yung belief niya about sa sarili niya nagbago. Kasi nga hindi naman yun talaga yung soul niya. Hindi naman talaga yun yung ideal version niya. It just so happened na yung bodily functions niya, no, hindi satisfy yung ibang mga needs niya or something like that. Kaya parang nabablock yung soul niya. So in Socratic method, you are essentially looking for the soul, or you're essentially extracting information about your soul so that you will discover more about it. And once you discover more about your soul, then according to Socrates, you will live a happy life. So ganun yung niya sa self natin. In other words, in short, Socrates believed that all men are good. No, it just so happens that the physical world is bad. That's why nalilimitahan tayo sa mga ganong mga pita ng laman. No? Kumbaga, kung ano yung mga distractions na dala ng physical body natin. Okay? Nagets nyo ba yung kay Socrates? Or masyado akong nag-blab? Nagets nyo ba?
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes po.
So that's how Socrates described the self. Okay? Now, let's move on kay Plato, na student ni Socrates, no? And as I've mentioned kanina, lahat ng alam natin kay Socrates ay galing kay Plato. So, it makes sense na medyo parehas sila ng kanilang beliefs, no? Naniniwala si Plato na immortal yung soul, naniniwala si Plato na kapag namatay yung tao, yung soul aalis, pupunta sa immortal world. Naniniwala din si Plato na, ano pa ba yung pinaniniwala ni Socrates? Naniniwala din si Plato na, ano pa ba? May physical realm and then may ideal realm, and then naniniwala din si Plato na yung soul natin is essentially good. It strives for wisdom, perfection, and reason is the tool to achieve an exalted state of life. Okay? So yun yung mga mga assumptions niya about the self. And dinagdagan niya pa, no? Ang problema kasi kay Socrates, problema per se, but hindi siya organized, no? Si Socrates, hindi siya organized since wala nga siyang sinulat. So, hindi niya sinulat yung mga ideas niya. So, walang organization yung mga ideas niya. So, medyo all over the place. Yung mga nag-organize lang yan si Plato. So, nung si Plato na yung gumawa ng kanyang sariling philosophy about the self, dinagdagan niya, which is yung the three parts of the self: the reason, the spirit or passion, and then the physical appetite. Okay? So si Plato ay si Socrates parang physical lang tsaka soul, no? Mayroon tayong physical body, meron tayong soul. Si Plato, yung self daw natin, yung soul natin, meron pa siyang tatlo na parts. Okay? Meron tayong reason, meron tayong spirit or passion, and then meron pa tayong physical appetite. So the reason is the divine essence that enables us to think deeply, make wise decisions, and achieve a true understanding of eternal truths. So reason, alam niyo yung reason, reasoning, di ba? Paano ka mag-logical thinking? That's the reasoning part of our self. And this enables us to think deeply, to make wise choices, and to achieve true understanding of eternal truths. So kung mataas ang reasoning mo, mataas ang chance na makilala mo yung sarili mo. Parang sinasabi ni Plato, so kung mababa yung reasoning skills mo, hindi mo makilala yung sarili mo. Yes, yun yung sinasabi ni Plato. And then the spirit or passion, which includes basic emotions such as love, anger, ambition, aggressiveness, and empathy. So itong mga to, they are yun yung emotional side ng mga tao. And all of us have emotions. And then lastly is the physical appetite, which includes biological needs such as hunger, thirst, and sexual desires. So itong tatlong to, they have their dynamic, no? May dynamic relationship sila with each other and sometimes in conflict sila. What do I mean by conflict? Kasi may mga times na reason and physical appetite does not make sense, no? Kasi yung physical appetite mo for sexual desire, kung kunyari meron ka ng jowa, tapos may sexual desire ka pa sa ibang tao, reason would suggest that is not a good thing. At least in this time and era of our, kung kailan tayo nabubuhay ngayon. And they are in conflict. O kaya naman yung may basic emotion ka that you love this person or you love. Let's say for example, you're angry at this person, no? But reason would suggest na hindi ka pwedeng magalit sa boss mo. Hindi mo pwedeng pakita yung galit mo sa boss mo. Diba? So sometimes they are in conflict with one another. O kaya gutom ka, wala kang pera, hindi ka na pwedeng kumuha na lang ng pagkain, magnakaw. Sabi ng reason mo, hindi dapat yun. Diba? So sometimes they are in conflict with each other, and yun nga, ang dapat mag-mediate din sa conflict ng mga yan is yung reason. Plato believes that it is the responsibility of our reason to sort things out, exert control, restoring a harmonious relationship among three elements of ourselves. So Plato believes that genuine happiness can only be achieved by people who consistently make sure that their reason is in control of their spirits and appetites. Okay? So basically yun nga, sinasabi ni Plato na ang mga taong reasonable, sila yung mga magiging masaya sa buhay. Dati naniniwala ako dito, pero eventually as I grew up, no, medyo, not really. Reason is a tool. No? It's yes, you must control your spirits and appetites through reason. But of course, there is a tendency na maging tyrant yung reason to the point na parang i-chapwera niya yung spirits and appetite. May reason kung bakit nandiyan ang spirits and appetite. And kung masyado mo silang isusuppress to the point na parang wala na yung saya sa buhay mo. No? But anyway, it's another theory na. But according kay Plato nga, reasoning is the most important part of ourselves. And we must always improve our reasoning ability so that we will know more about ourselves. Okay? So yun yung point ni Plato. Hindi niya, kumbaga, mas priority dapat yung pag-improve ng reasoning skills natin. Okay? So sa mga math majors dyan, di na kayo mahirapan kasi basically yung math is practice for reason, di ba? So you can't be a mathematician if you don't have a reasoning ability that is beyond what is normal, di ba? So you're in good hands. Okay? So far, do you have any questions about Plato and his
Yes.
perspective of self? Wala. Okay. Remember pala, these are just parts of their philosophy, ha? Hindi ito yung whole philosophy nila kasi masyadong mahaba yung mga philosophy nila. And this is not a philosophy class. So, it's more on the philosophy of these people about the self. Okay? Just to make things clear lang. Hindi ito yung buong theory nila. Then, let's move on kay Aristotle. So, si Aristotle, siya yung third and possibly the most advanced, hindi mo advanced, no? Siya yung, in terms of scientific thinking, siya yung pinaka-scientific for his time. And remember, wala pang science during their time. Ang science, bago lang yan, no? Ang scientific method na formalize lang siya 200 years ago. Alam nyo ba yun? No? Even yung panahon pa ni na Galileo, wala pa talagang formality. Walang formalized way of scientific method. Kaya nga nakulong siya, di ba? Nung sinabi niyang the earth revolves around the sun. Nung sinabi niya yun, sabi ng Catholic Church, heresy, ayun, kinulong siya. Wala pa kasing scientific method. But anyway, so Aristotle, for Aristotle, the body and soul are not two separate elements but are one thing. So sutil itong si Aristotle. Sutil siya sa tatlo kasi 'di ba sabi ni Socrates, sabi ni Plato, ay magkahiwalay yan. Yung body natin, yung soul natin, magkahiwalay sila. Pag namatay yung body, yung soul, mag-a-ascend. Pupunta ng ideal realm, no? Or the soul realm, or soul world. Pero sa Aristotle, no. Both body and souls are not two separate things. They are one thing, sabi niya. So the soul is simply the form of the body and is not capable of existing without the body. The soul is that which makes a person a person. The soul is the essence of the self. So basically, sinasabi niya that our physical body is also part of, yung physical body natin is the form. I mean, tama, yung physical body natin, yun yung parang manifestation ng soul natin. Okay? Meron tayong soul, and that soul will somehow create a body for himself or for herself, and that is, yun yung parang magiging house niya. And if the body is not there, the soul will not be able to survive. Okay? So, hindi sila separate things. Okay? The soul is what is that which makes a person a person. The soul is the essence of the self. Okay? Although sinabi niya pa rin naman na yung physical body natin, it's not one all be all. Soul pa rin yung parang pinaka-essence ng buhay, pinaka-essence ng self natin. So, yun pa rin yung parang center ng ating pagkatao. So without the body, soul cannot exist. So the soul dies along with the body. So hindi siya naniniwala sa afterlife. Yung naunang dalawa natin, naniniwala sila sa afterlife. Although yung afterlife nila, iba sa Christianity. Pag-uusapan natin mamaya, iba sa Christianity. Yung afterlife nila, yung ideal realm or yung spiritual realm na tinatawag. Parang yun yung parang lahat ng nandun is immortal, lahat ng nandun is perfect, lahat ng nandun is ideal. Pero it doesn't necessarily mean heaven yon. Okay? Iba yung heaven. Mamaya yung heaven. So, without the body, the soul cannot exist. So, the soul dies along with the body. Okay? Aristotle suggested that anything with life has a soul. So, there are three kinds of soul: vegetative, sentient, and rational. So, in vegetative, yan. This is the physical body, allows things to grow. And then, kumbaga yung mga plants, no, vegetative yung mga yan, they have the ability to grow, kaya vegetative spirit or the vegetative soul sila. And then sentient, yung mga animals which are sensual desires, feelings and emotions. And then of course yung rational soul. And this is what makes us human. It includes intellect that make man know and understand things. Sabi ni Aristotle, people are rational animals. And our rational nature Aristotle suggests that the rational nature of the self is to lead a good, flourishing, and fulfilling life. So again, remember, we have rational soul. Okay? I'm not really sure kung sinasabi niya na meron din tayong sentient and vegetative kasi basically yung vegetative yun yung physical body, sentient yun yung emotions natin. And then rational is yun nga, yung reasoning part. No? Kung meron man silang common yung tatlo, yung reasoning, no? Yung pagbigay nila ng importance sa reasoning ability ng tao is very, very heavy kung mapapansin nyo. Okay? So, yun. Para daw mas maging ano tayo sa ating self, kailangan nating, again, same with the, Socrates and Plato, yung rational thinking natin, kailangan natin siyang i-improve. Kailangan natin siyang i-develop kasi ito yung magdadala sa atin ng flourishing and fulfilling life. Once we understand who we are, once we understand how things work around us and how we react to the things around us, then we will have the capacity to become happy, to become flourishing, to have a fulfilling life. Okay? So, ganyan si Aristotle sa kanyang paniniwala. Si Aristotle, hindi niya sinabi na yung soul is essentially good. Wala siyang sinabing ganon. Sinabi niya lang na yung rationality natin, it will help us, no, to know more about things, and this knowing more about things will help us grow as a person, to live a virtuous life, to live a happy life, and to live a satisfying life. Okay? So, kasi parang ang ano dito, si Socrates and Plato, parang sinasabi nila, good naman tayo, kailangan lang natin ihiwalay yung physical body natin sa soul natin. Si Aristotle hindi, isama mo yung physical mo, no? Parang kasama sa essence na kasama sa self natin yung physical body natin. So kapag gusto mong maging masaya or gusto mong ma-develop yung sarili mo, dapat kasama yung physical body. So kailangan mong alagaan yung physical body mo. Kailangan mong kumbaga kasi sina Socrates and Plato parang sinasabi nila, sa ideal realm naman, sa ideal world naman, hindi mo naman dadalhin yung katawan mo. So okay lang na hindi siya healthy, okay lang na hindi siya hindi mo siya pansinin, wag mo bigay yung mga appetite niya, no? Kumbaga hindi nila binibigyan ng importansya yung physical na katawan. Masyado silang isip. Ganun yung dalawa, si Socrates and Plato. Si Aristotle on the other hand, hindi. Meron nga siyang tinatawag na golden mean, no, sa virtuous life. Golden mean na 'yan yung parang there's a thin line between courageousness and stupidity. So, and then cowardice and di ba, yung mga taong coward, may mga taong coward pero hindi yung coward, yung mga duwag, no? Hindi naman lahat ng duwag dahil duwag lang sila. It's just so happen na matalino sila. Alam nila kung kailan mag-back out. Meron silang konting kaduwagan at konting katapangan at konting making sense, no? Konting utak para umurong sa mga laban na hindi nila kayang labanan. So sabi ni Aristotle, ganun din daw sa self natin. Hindi lang dapat isa yung inaano natin, yung binibigyan natin ng importance. Hindi lang yung soul, dapat pati yung physical body. Pati yung sentience natin dapat inaalagaan natin. Kasi kung hindi daw, ano pang buhay, ano pang sense ng buhay mo? And yung rational part natin, yung tutulong sa atin para masatisfy yung needs ng body and ng soul natin. Okay? So, yun yung tatlong ancient Greek philosophers na about the self. Okay? So, palagay nyo sa kanilang tatlo, kanino kayo mas nag-agree? Palagay nyo, sino yung ano nyo? Sino yung bet ninyo? Si Socrates ba? Si Plato ba? Si Aristotle? Bago tayo mag-move on. Nagets niyo ba sila? Kanino kayo comfortable yan? Kanino kayo comfortable na paniniwala? Kahit chat nyo na lang. Aristotle. Okay. Siguro bias din kasi dahil gusto ko si Aristotle. Gusto ko yung way niya. Kaya mas in-emphasize ko yung sa kanya. Aristotle lahat. Okay, sige. Okay. Ako din si Aristotle, no, yung mas prefer ko si Aristotle. Nung binasa ko yung philosophies nilang tatlo, yung as in yung buong philosophies nilang tatlo, mas nagme-make sense para sa akin si Aristotle. And siguro dahil mas focus siya sa yung integrative siya, no? Integrative yung kanyang way of looking at the self. So parang mas nag-appeal siya sa akin kasi oo nga naman, parang nabubuhay tayo sa mundong ito. Bakit ka pag-aano dun sa soul lang, dun sa utak lang. Kailangan din yung katawan, di ba? Kasi kung wala yung katawan, wala yung soul, no? So, mahirapan yung soul mo. So, ayun. And yun nga din, yung sabi ni Aristotle, yung virtue, no? Kailangan balance siya. Hindi siya dapat one-sided lang. No? But anyway, yung mga tatlo, yung dalawa din naman, meron silang ganong mga, sa living a virtuous life. But mas naging si Aristotle doon, mas naging detailed siya. But anyway, so that's the Greek ancient Greek philosophers, no? Do you have any questions pa or any clarifications with regards to how they view self? Wala. Okay, so let's move on, no? Let's move on sa medieval philosophy, and sa medieval philosophy yung self is mas nagano si Saint Augustine. But remember, there are a lot of medieval philosophers. Even nandiyan sina Saint Augustine, no? Si Saint Thomas, and even sina Averroes, no? Si Averroes ba yun? Basta yung Muslim na philosopher, isa sa mga Muslim philosopher. And these philosophers, medieval philosophers, they based their philosophy on ancient Greeks, specifically kay Socrates and Plato. May mga actually si Averroes kay Aristotle siya. Aristotle yung niya, yung inadopt niya. Pero si Saint Augustine, Plato, Socrates siya. No? So, yan. Saint Augustine basically adopted Socrates and Plato to the Christian world. Okay? So, he developed a more unified perspective on the body and soul. The soul is what governs and defines the human person or the self. The soul is an important element of man. If you're observant enough, you will notice that some of the doctrine of the Catholic Church are not really found explicitly in the Bible. Although nandun sa Bible, right, for example, the soul of person, saan ba napupunta yung soul ng yung soul kapag namatay yung tao. If you will read the Bible, wala silang explicit na sinasabi kung saan mapupunta. No? Although maliban lang kay Jesus dun sa dagatang apoy na sinabi niya pag hindi ka sumunod sa But on the wala silang explicit na may langit or something, no? Pero merong implication, no? Hindi ini-imply nila na gano'n. Na may soul yung katawan, kapag namatay yung soul na yan, mapupunta siya sa somewhere, di ba? So, si Saint Augustine siya yung nag-formalize niyan, or isa siya sa mga nag-formalize ng ganyang doctrine. And base yung doctrine na yan sa philosophies ni na Socrates and Plato. So, the soul is what governs and defines the human person or the self. No? Walang sinabi ganyan sa Bible, pero ini-imply naman ng Bible na ganyan. So, si Saint Augustine yung nag-formalize dyan. And the soul is an important element of man. So, the soul is united with the body so that the man may be entire and complete. And the physical body is different from the inferior to its inhabitant, the immortal soul. Again, nakikita niyo dito yung influence, no? May influence din ng konti kay Aristotle kasi naka-unify naman kahit paano yung body and soul. But nakikita niyo pa din dito yung importance ng soul compared sa physical body. So Augustine described that humankind is created in the image and likeness of God based on Genesis. So Augustine believed that God is transcendent and everything created by God, who is all good, is good. So the soul was created by God, man was created by God, and God is good, therefore man is also good. Right? So that's how the logic goes. Therefore, the human person, being a creation of God, is always geared towards the good. So the self is known only through knowing God. Self-knowledge is a consequence of the knowledge of God. And for Augustine, knowledge can only come by seeing the truth that dwells within us. And yung truth na yun is about God. God yun. God is transcendent and self seeks to be united with God through faith and reason. So, in short, knowing God is also knowing oneself. So, sabi ni Saint Augustine, ito yung kwento ni Saint Augustine, parang basically, God created the soul, and since God is good, and all He creates is good, then the soul is good. So the soul is good, the soul is good, the soul is there, but it is in a physical body. And as mentioned kanina, physical body is inferior to the inhabitant, which is the immortal soul. So for the physical body to become united, to become full, to become the best version of themselves, they must know their soul. And one way, and the only way, actually, St. Augustine said, the only way to know your soul is to know more about God. So if you know more about God, then you know more about your soul, then you will become more happy because you know who you really are, which is you are made in the likeness of God. Okay? So yun yung kay St. Augustine. It's a mixture of Socrates and biblical passages or biblical interpretations. Simple lang, di ba? Nagets ba yung kay St. Augustine?
Yes po.
Okay. So
Yes po.
I think marami sa inyo mag-agree kay Augustine since Philippines is a religious country. But I know naman, meron din mga ibang hindi. So para sa mga hindi satisfied sa philosophy na yon, sa medieval philosophy, especially the Christian philosophy, we will move on sa ating modern philosophers, which is yung mga modern philosophers, medyo madami sila. No? So si Descartes, Locke ba to o Locke? Di ko alam. Hume, Kant, Freud, Ryle, Churchland, and merleu-ponty. Before we move on sa modern philosophy, I think we must have a short 10-minute break since alam ko medyo na yung mga utak nyo yan dahil magawa 1 hour na. Okay? So I will end the recording muna and we will go to the part 2 later at 9 a.m. Would that be okay?